I think alignment to most of us in everyday life means do things link up in ways that are logical. Does one thing lead to another? Do the pieces form a whole? And when we're creating a course, alignment for most of us means, are we asking students to do things, read things, do assignments that actually lead to the kind of learning that we expect them to demonstrate by the end of the course? Do those things sync up?
If your course were a song, what would it sound like? Did your learning outcomes establish a clear melody in the first few measures of the term so that students quickly catch on to the dominant themes? And what about your classroom activities and required assignments? How well do they harmonize with intended outcomes so that different instruments of your teaching all work in concert with the precision of a string quartet? By aligning activities and assignments with learning outcomes, your course can really start to sing. Better alignment provides students with the opportunity to practice the skills you want them to develop and to demonstrate their learning what you want them to know. Linda Nilsson's 3-step process can help. First, identify the cognitive levels of your learning outcomes. Are you asking students to remember and understand new information, apply a process, analyze data, or evaluate a situation, or create something new? Then use teaching methods and required assignments that best align with those cognitive levels.
When you explain to students why you are doing what you're doing, why you are having these 5 different activities in the class, or going over the material in different ways, or whatever you are doing, you need to tell them that this is a conscious decision on your part, that you have planned it and you know from the research this is what works. This shows respect for them, and it also shows caring for their learning and for their success.
For example, if you want students to understand new facts, an interactive lecture can work. If you want them to conduct an analysis and evaluate points of view, a group project is likely better. Finally, incorporate into your selected approach teaching moves that also align. If you want students to remember new facts, it's helpful to pose questions that activate their prior knowledge, to which new information can connect.
I think it's pretty clear that if you want students to develop skills, lecturing at them doesn't develop skill. So there's an alignment that we can see between certain kinds of teaching and learning activities or approaches and certain kinds of outcomes that we want.
As Marianne Winkelmess suggests, aligning assignments with outcomes is important, but not necessarily sufficient. Student achievement is even stronger when your design is transparent, so they can see why you've asked them to do one thing and not another.
I think for most instructors and faculty, we all have a sense of what it is we want students to learn by the end of the course. And we have a pretty clear sense of what it is we want students to practice doing inside of each particular assignment. But the Tilt Higher Ed project has given us an additional reason to think about how each of those assignments fits together in a sequence whose parts align with the ultimate learning goals that we hope our students will gain by the end of the course.
The transparent assignment template can help students understand the assignment's purpose by specifying knowledge and skills you intend them to gain.
The purpose has 2 parts, really. What skills will the students practice from doing this assignment? And what knowledge will they gain from working on this particular assignment? And we ask the teachers to talk with students not just about the skills and the knowledge as they pertain to that one assignment, but how does that set of skills and that piece of knowledge relate to the students' real lives? How can they gain skills and knowledge that will in some way be useful to them in facing actual scenarios and real-world problems that they'll encounter in life?
Then the sequence of steps to complete the task.
The next thing we ask teachers and students to talk about ahead of time, before the students start doing any work, is the task. That's fairly simple. It's just, what do the teachers expect students to do, and how should they do it? And to provide some direction about this helps students produce higher quality work because they waste less time figuring out how, and instead focusing on the task at hand.
And finally, your criteria for success with examples. defining the finished product.
The last thing we want teachers and students to talk about explicitly together before the students start working is criteria. We ask for the teachers and students to come up with some sort of a checklist of expectations. But that's not enough. In addition to that, we want for students to see examples of what work looks like when it meets those expectations and sometimes when it doesn't. This is because we want students to be able to self-evaluate their own progress while they're working on an assignment. We don't want the grade or the result to come to them as a surprise at the end. We want for students to be able to self-regulate and judge their own progress while they're at work on the assignment.
Transparent design helps to increase the cognitive level of your course itself. It asks students to understand why you've assigned what you have, apply necessary steps, and evaluate their work against criteria. And for those students who might otherwise view assignments as pointless, transparent design makes things relevant.
Transparency is a framework that I think will help students to recognize the value of any individual academic work they are doing on the way toward the degree, which will help them to find better jobs and to ascend into higher socioeconomic strata, into more fulfilling jobs and more satisfying careers as lifelong learners in whatever context they choose.
Finally, it's worth explaining to your students how time in and out of class actually work together to make a well-orchestrated learning experience. Graphic organizers can make the semester's logic more clear, showing how homework relates to in-class activities and major assignments. This can debunk the perception that learning is contained to class time.
Well, the focus is really on what can we do when I'm teaching that will help them learn the material that they will mostly have to learn when I'm not around. They'll mostly need to learn that by reading and writing and practicing outside, whether it's doing homework or working in a clinic or writing a paper or doing research online. Most of the work of learning is going to have to take place outside of that classroom experience. And so my job in the classroom, as I see it, is both to set them up for that and to help them do that most successfully, and then to check and see how well they're doing it and to give them feedback that will help them improve.
College asks a lot of students. For many, it's their first real experience with independence and self-reliance. Other diversions and responsibilities can direct attention away from their studies. At times, it can seem like a cacophony.
I'm very interested in whether students understand why we're doing what we're doing and see the connections between what we're doing, certain activities and assignments, and the overall outcomes, and whether they, more importantly, see value in that in relation to their lives, their career plans, and their goals. If that doesn't happen, then they're not going to be motivated to learn, and nothing that I do, if they're not motivated to learn, is going to make much difference.
By aligning the different notes in your course and composing your own classical score, you can help your students separate the noise from the music.